Welcome to the Perspective Podcast, where we embrace open dialogue from different perspectives about entrepreneurship, relationships, and education.
And this open dialogue is needed, especially today, as we live in a Twitter finger society where everyone seems to care more about getting their point across than they are about hearing the other person's perspective.
If you're ready to grow your business, your relationships, and your personal development, stick with us here at the Perspective Podcast, because sometimes in life, to get to the next level, you just need a different perspective.
If I look like what I've been through, I'd be roadkill. Tell me off of the pavement, I'm reeking from the...
All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Perspective Podcast. I'm C. Muzan. Got T here with me. Say what's up, T.
What's going on, family?
As we are back another week. Excited to be back with you. Always a good time jumping on, sharing our perspective, hearing your perspective. Again, thanks for everyone that hits us up and messages us. We love hearing your perspective, and we want to continue to hear your perspective. So that's why we're here with another topic, right? Another one. Again, you guys know, we say it all the time. This is fun time for T and I. We get a chance to just have conversation and go back and forth. And again, before we jumped on and recorded this, we were just kind of talking and said, hey, what's going on in the world? Like, what's on your mind? What are you thinking about right now? And I was like, and I said it kind of jokingly, but I was like, oh, not thinking about much, just that the world's burning down, right?
I'm like, you can't just say that. I have 1,000 ways this can go, even based on all of our last episodes. So which direction do you want to go with this?
That's right. It was a very open-ended statement of like, what do we want to tackle in the world burning down? But it's funny because that statement, I was just at a wedding yesterday, and that statement popped into my mind because one of our friends at that wedding asked us, like, how are you guys optimistic raising children in a world that's on fire or something? And I was like, that's a good question. We kind of don't think about all those things. And then the other side is you do what you can as a family to build that moat around. So like, it shields that. So that's kind of my practical answer. But it did get me thinking, like, damn, there's a lot of stuff happening in the world right now, and a lot of things that, like, you know, we don't really know the answer to. And one of the biggest things that just recently was on my mind, because you guys know we play in the financial space, so always looking at money and businesses and all that stuff. One of the things that I looked at was where our country sits right now, or where we were sitting, right, in our debt position. So for those people that don't know, right, like, we just had some things go through Congress, because the U.S. was very close on defaulting on their debt, meaning again, right? This is new, but like also like meaning that, like, hey, at some point they might not be able to pay back the debts that they owe, right? And then all of a sudden we're going to be in, again, it's like a personal financial matter. Like, if you can't pay back your debts, like, people can come after you. You might have to file bankruptcy. Like, there's going to be real ramifications for owing money. So the US had to raise the debt ceiling, right? And say, okay, well, we can basically, if you want to understand in layman's terms, what happened is the US has a credit card that has a limit of balance, like a limit of, let's just say, $100 trillion. That's what they have a limit for. They are at 999 billion, 900, whatever that comes out to, as their balance. So we have only this much left on our credit card limit as a country. And they're saying, hey, you get any more above that, you're going to have to default. So what the country decided to do is say, well, we're going to take our $100 trillion limit and we're going to turn that to a $500 trillion limit, just for now.
We change the rules.
We're just going to change the rules. Let's not do anything else. We're just going to not pay this stuff back. We're just going to raise our credit limit. That's all. And because we print the money and we make the rules, we can do that. I don't know if anyone that's listening knows that how much of a problem that could be, but that's what we're going to talk about a little bit.
Yeah, it's like they did this particular time around, they were trying to raise the ceiling, which is what Chris is talking about. And they kept blocking it. Well, the Republicans kept blocking it in the Senate. And there was enough Democrats that were also like, they didn't want to do it either. They didn't want to keep kicking the can down the road, if you will. So they had a funding stopgap. So essentially, it was like you pulled some money from another credit card to pay that credit card, so that credit card wouldn't go into default. Like that's essentially what just happened. It's just a funding stopgap.
That's it. That's
Till
it.
December 3rd, then we'll do it all over again.
Then
So
we're
we have essentially like 60 days or whatever it is before it happens again. So
figure it out. But at the end of the day, we have 60 days. I don't think people understand. We have 60 days again to figure out this huge issue that potentially could, I don't know, cause a major collapse in our country. A major collapse. We had 2 weeks to do it. Then they kicked the can down the road. So now we have a little bit more grace period, a little bit more leeway.
Yeah.
But we will never avoid this. And this is a sign. And this is something that it does worry me a bit. And I know you said this, T, that like you were saying, you were talking to your wife and saying like how worried you are about this country and the position that we're in. And from our leadership standpoint, right? It seems like they're just kicking the can down the road.
It's so political, in my opinion, right now, Chris, that common, rational, objective strategy is like not useful. Like it can't even be used right now. Like even if and just for everybody, if Trump came and he was president right now, he was like, look, hey, all right, all bets are off, all nonsense are off. I'll put my ego to the side. We actually need to get this done. I don't care about like my political career. I don't care about anything. We need to do this in the best interest of our country for today, because these are today problems now. And in the future, we're still fighting with the pandemic. We're still, we still have like, people unemployed. We still have companies that aren't trickling down, whatever, right? Like we still got some major problems today and that are going to 30x for our children and our children's children. Let's get it done. The problem is, even if Trump came and said that, you're going to have too many people on the left that are like, but you're Trump. And there's not going to be chaos because it's going to look like a political win for him. Same thing if Biden says it. And, and he comes in and he says everything I just said. The far right, no, we're not going to give you that win. And this didn't start like more recently, but I remember picking up on it when Obama first got in office, and the Republicans at that time were like, we are going to block everything that he wants to do, even if it's things that we were fighting for before him, because we do not want him to have a political win. And this is the problem. And Democrats are doing it too. And now you're seeing it on both sides, to the point of like, we are literally like, well, we just gonna all die. we just gonna all go down because I'm not going to let you look like the hero. I'm not going to let you look like you're the winner. And it's getting in front of pride. This is what I'm worried about. The Bible says pride comes before the fall. And I'm not trying to speak prophetically negatively on our country in that sense, right? I probably have some Bible listed people here like, oh, he just prophesied. No, I did not. What I'm saying is we have an opportunity right now to not let the sun, if you will, go down in our anger and frustration towards other political parties. And we do have an opportunity to make a shift. But we have to just agree that we want it to happen and forget about who gets the credit. And I think when you get to that point where it doesn't matter who gets the credit, be on the right side of history. Like, be on that side. Yeah, somebody's going to wave the flag and be able to say, okay, we were leading while this happened, but I want to be on the championship team. I want to be on the team that won. Okay, I didn't score the most points. I had the most rebounds and the most blocks and the most assists, but I was on the championship team, and we're just not there yet. We're literally all trying to individualize this, do it our way in spite of everybody else, and then also say we want to win as a country. Like United States, I've been saying for a long time, I've only seen divided states.
Yeah, and it's
right?
true, man.
And that's kind of like this overwhelming feel that I have. And you're talking about something so serious that it takes attention and detail and objectivity. And I don't see how we get there given the current political environment. I just don't.
I hear you. And that's, I think, the problem. If we could identify it, is everything has become politicized. Like every topic that we need to address has turned to something that is more political than it is about the thing that we're talking about. And that's happening all across the board. And that's the issue, right? The topic I want to talk about is the fact that, like, as a country, like, we could lose it all. I don't think people understand how close we are to that.
Like, the one thing that'll keep us from losing all is that we have a fantastic military. Like, we have a really, really, really good, fantastic military. That's about it. Like, I got a big gun.
But if you really play in that geopolitical space, that might not be true either, right? Like, if you really play around, like, our Navy is not the number one. Like, you go, like, China and like other countries actually do have.
No, they're superior in some way. I think overall, like, if you put our all four branches up collectively, we have the best military on the planet.
Sure, but look at what we're saying.
I know we're saying literally we're gonna get to the point where we gotta fight somebody.
Yeah, look at what we're saying. Like that, like, okay, all else fails because we can't figure this out. Well, at least we got.
You can't beat me up.
Yeah, at least we fight you. But now it's like, okay, but now look at what we're saying. Like, we're gonna go to war. Like, that's the place, because our lifetime, we haven't really, I mean, the Afghanistan war, like, we were in war, but not.
We were in war, like, we were fighting people in caves.
Right.
We were not literally fighting against, like, Nazi Germany, another strong,
they're not on
vibrant
our soil.
Army.
Right.
Yes.
And it wasn't on our soil outside of 9/11, right?
Yes.
With terrorist attack. There wasn't on our soil. We're not worried about bombs going off. We don't have, right, the alarms that start alarming in your city because the bombs are. But what if we did get to that place? Like, and that's all we have to stand on, because all we're fighting is military, because we can't come together to talk about any of the other things. Like, this is where we're headed. You listen to any, right, big player, meaning like financially in business or politically, they talk about how close we are to potential war, just in general, because we're fighting for power. We're fighting for power on the geopolitical side.
But
right?
Can't you argue that that's been like that since, I mean, Desert Storm? We've always been on the brink of a war.
Yes, but
to some point, right?
Yes, but now it's the tipping point, because the US could fall as a global power. This is strategy. Strategy is you strike when your enemy is the weakest. You strike.
Yeah, well, and they're usually the weakest when they're full.
So that's why China and all these countries have been, Russia, they've all been just building up, and we've been the top dog, right? This is just business, right? If you think about it that way, you're always going after, if you're at the top, someone's always coming after you. You never have.
It's easier to chase something than pave a way.
Exactly. You can't be you're not going to be number one forever. You're going to get knocked off. The US has had a great 200-something year run, 400.
Well, since I would argue since World War II, but nonetheless.
What were the dates of World War II? Because I'm not a historian.
47. Somebody's going to call us out on this. I think it's 47.
Yeah, probably.
I think it's 46, 47. Hold up. That's what good Google is for.
Good old Google, right?
Good old Google. This is what we pay them. This is why I got everything on Google.
Good old
They have
Google.
my whole life in their hands.
and being able to record this, right?
Hey, listen. Hey, look, 45. Dang, I said 47, but it was 45. Right. I was close.
So who would you say was the global superpower before?
Oh, we came out the superpower on that one.
Yeah, but who was before? Who was it? Britain? Was it?
I guess so. Yeah. Germany started rising, obviously, pretty strong. Years before that.
I feel like, and again, you guys are listening. We're not historians. We just
obviously we're just.
Obviously, but like, I feel like the United States has had its right. Whenever the reserve currency of the world went to the dollar and it moved away from the pound, that's when you need to figure it out, because that's when when the reserve currency of the world becomes your country's currency, like you're a superpower, right?
44.
Okay. Right.
So right before
that, right?
Yeah, right before. Yeah.
The US dollar becomes the reserve currency of the world. That means you got it. You're number one. Okay. So we're going on an 80-year run. Let's just say we're going on an 80-year run of being number one. Okay. That and Ray Dalio, right, me knowing the financial side, he talks about the short-term debt cycle and the long-term debt cycle. The long-term debt cycle plays out over about 100-year period, which is
so we're about 3/4 of the way there.
So
that's our kids. That's our life.
That's our life. That's our kids' life. Like, so think of what we're setting them up for, right? We started this conversation talking about the world melting down, right? But now how that happens by dividing our nation politically, so we actually can't get anything done, yet these problems still linger. And one of the biggest problems is this financial side of our country, because if we default on a lot of this stuff, and all of a sudden, basically, we could lose the reserve currency of the world. Like, the dollar could eventually not become the reserve currency anymore.
Yeah, that puts us in a very, very vulnerable position. Because right now we control because
you can go.
You're backed by us.
Yeah, because you can go to another country and be like, I need dollars, and they're like, okay, we know what that is.
Yeah. We can exchange that.
Yeah, but if we start going to Cuba, or we go to another country and they're like, oh, it's the yen, or it's the right, like, and now all of a sudden the value of the dollar goes down. Now, if we owe people money in the dollar, and
our debt automatically doubles and triples, because if we're already short, and then you're like, well, your dollar now is worth 25 cents, it's shorter,
and you still owe us money, we're gonna come take your land. Like, there's gonna be real, like, geographic things that start happening in our world that, like, we need to be concerned about. And we can't even have a conversation about what the debt ceiling looks like, right? And again, this is just one area. We can talk about global warming. We can talk about economy, growth.
There's no such thing as global warming.
Yeah, right. Sure.
I'm telling you.
So, right? Like,
I don't even want to go down that conversation.
I know, right? But I'm just saying, because it's going to bring up the same things. There's going to be this group of people that's like, you're full of shit.
But you see how we just did that? Think about what we just did. You're about to name off like 3 topics, and I was literally going to like mess with you and be like, oh, I don't know about that. Oh, no, that's not true. Like, we live in a world where literally, like, people lie. And whether, like, people legitimately just lie or take information. Look, Rudy Giuliani just came out like the other day and said most of his data that when he first started getting about the election being fraudulent came off of what he saw on Facebook. Like, an esteemed attorney that used to be the mayor of New York City, if I'm not mistaken, right? Yeah, right. During his tenure, a lot of crackdown on crime. He had some real interesting practices, but nonetheless, right? Literally said the start of his information came from Facebook, seeing things that he saw on Facebook that made him kind of research more. Like, you know how easy it is for me right now to just go up and put up a fake, little bit twisted, altered piece of information on a meme, and that thing gets cycled through if I do it the right way and tag it the right way and put it in front of the right people, right? If I could technically do that. Like, this is crazy. And this is kind of like, I don't know, like I'm in a position now in my company, and it's, we're under 10 million, right? And like, less than 40, like a little bit over 40 employees. And I'm just like, I'm seeing how hard it is sometimes try to bring people together when they pay to do a job, right? Like, I'm literally like, no, like, you're not seeing this. I need you to get here. And I'm strategizing. What do I need to do? Human influence, da, 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 da. Can you see it? Are we doing it the right way? Are you thinking? And so I'm seeing how hard it is with an under $10 million a year company. We are now talking about the richest country in the planet that has its currency as the standard of the global economy and all these things, and people are jostling for ultimate power. It is mind-boggling.
Nations fall. There's rises and falls of nations. The citizens, the people that live inside of those nations, need to be aware of what's happening in their country. And a lot of times they don't give us all the information. You parallel this to business and you seeing it in business, right? Just
trying to bring a group of 40 together.
Bringing people together, right? And how difficult that is. And we kind of touched on it a little bit when we were talking before, that like what actually is needed is a long-term vision, a long-term plan that
Yes.
allows us to say, okay, we know where we're at right now, but here's what we need to do. We need to break this, change this, shift this, take 2 steps backwards to take 10 leaps forward, right? Like,
Correct.
you
Yeah,
have
and
to
be
have that
willing to
mindset.
adjust, and then be willing to adjust, right? But Chris, let's say Biden comes out today, and I'm using Biden because he's the current president, right? If this was Trump, I would say Trump. And he comes in, he says, "Look, I'm taking off my Democrat hat. I'm an American, and I have a job, and I'm going to partner with the Federal Reserve. I'm going to partner with private business. I'm going to partner with the military, and we're going to come to the table. And the chiefs of the world, we need to do this. We need to make this happen." Do you really believe that those that don't like him for whatever reason are going to let that happen?
Absolutely not.
And that's the problem. Like, that's the problem.
That is. And because of that, what's going to happen? Right? We're going to kick this can down the road. That's what we're doing. Right? No one wants to take the fall. I was going to say this out like on like Facebook or something, or just joke, but like, whoever our next president is probably will go down as possibly the worst president of all time if they do this right. If they do this right, because we're kicking a can down the road that we can't kick much further. We can't kick it much further, right? So what's going to happen is we're going to have to call it, and we're going to have to do whatever is necessary.
You're gonna have to eat. You're gonna have to eat
That's
that
it.
meal.
And
You're
you're
gonna
gonna
have to eat that meal. You have to eat it. You cooked it. You're gonna have to eat
We
it.
cooked it. We're gonna have to eat it. We're gonna have to take that L. We're gonna have to do that and take those steps back and take those losses and have the economy collapse and lose all your money in the stock market and have the real estate market collapse and have people lose jobs and have like all the shit that we don't want to happen, that we're like, oh, it's not gonna happen. It's got to happen in order for us to get over this hump.
So why do you say that? So because that's a pretty hot take right there, right? Like I can't let that pass. I'm not informed enough to know exactly that has to happen that way. I think we talked about it. Like, it feels like we got to pay this debt. We got to shore up some things. But from your viewpoint, you're in the world of money every single day. Why do you feel like that has to happen for our people?
So first off, let's just keep it practical. Before we get into like global and like international type business and stuff like that, let's just keep it practical. If you have a lot of debt personally as a family, if you just have a lot of debt, what are your options? How do you get out of debt?
You gotta cut some expenses and raise your income to accelerate the debt payoff, and then focus on paying off debt for the period of time within a stated budget. It's pretty straightforward to me, right?
Pretty straightforward, right? Okay. Same thing for the country. What are the country's expenses? Right? That's what we have to start looking at.
So cut some fat.
That's right. We got to start looking at the expenses. Well, unfortunately, like the country's expenses are us. Like the country spends money on us. They spend money to keep us happy. They spend money on roads and Congress and lawmakers and
welfare programs, social programs of some sort. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Healthcare. Right.
We also donate a lot of money to other countries. Like
so
real talk.
So that's the countryside. Like we'll get there, right? We'll get there. And it's funny because this all plays, and this is probably a really good analogy if you just take it on like a personal level of what that looks like. So again, you're in a ton of debt as a family. Okay, I can lower my expenses. I could raise the revenue that's coming in to offset it and just kind of pay this thing down. Just keep,
because you only can go so low on your expenses. I mean,
that's right.
Yeah,
right.
Like
exactly. But like
there's more upside than downside.
That's right. So that becomes it. So cutting some fat, the country might have to cut some fat. It might have to say, hey, we can't pay as much in pensions. What was going to happen if they defaulted, by the way, what was going to happen if Biden didn't come in and do this emergency thing is payments would have been late for people that needed Social Security or their pensions, right? Or veterans. Those payments, which haven't been late in 60 years, would have been late because the government doesn't have the money to pay the expenses of our country, right? Because we're in debt. So it's hard to now, I can't pay you your Social Security on time because we're trying to find the money. And that affects us, the people in the country. Right.
Yeah. If you're on Social Security or have family that is.
That's right. So that's the expenses that they got to figure out. All right, what do we do? And if there's not much we can do on that side, then okay, how do we raise income? Well, how does our country make income? Taxes from the people. taxes from the people inside of the country. That's how they make money. And then GDP.
Taxes on the businesses.
Right, exactly. Taxes on the businesses, but then the gross, right, like what they bring
export,
what they import into this country. That's
how
what
we export.
That's how our country makes revenue, right?
Yeah.
That's it. Like it's real basic. So once you understand, okay, well, how do we make revenue? Okay, taxes. That's why you hear all these tax bills coming out. But that's going to go back into that political thing.
Are you about to be the president that says I got to raise your taxes?
That's right. And
or Congress or whatever.
Exactly. And then who approves that? Do the Republicans say that's the right way to go? Because they've always get that pushback. Like, you're going to raise taxes. Like, don't do this just for us. Like, do it for everybody. But then what happens? That's a way of revenue for our country. So that's going to have to be on the table, right? Other ways of revenue, again, taxing businesses. So again, that's just also in the tax side of things. But now we have to look at what happens overseas, right? How we import, export. Well, what do we export from this country? And again, I'm not even a master of knowing all this stuff, but I'll tell you.
Yeah. We export a bunch of stuff like, there's food, obviously we export. There's a lot of technologies that we export. Hell, we even export like even furniture and different things of that nature. Not as grand scale,
right.
But let me. I'm curious. I think technology might be the largest thing. Let me see. What is the largest? Hold on, I gotta find this out. Export.
Yeah, Google it.
Of the United States. Now I'm curious.
Yeah, gotta love Google.
Top food and beverage, oil, aircrafts. That makes sense. Auto parts, engines, tires.
So listen to that, ladies and gentlemen. He just hit one of those big ones, aircrafts, huh? So when the pandemic hit, what did they save? What did the country come in and save? They saved the airlines.
Yeah.
They'll constantly save the airlines. Why? Because it's one of the largest revenue generators, right, for our country. So we got to know that. So when people are debating like, you saved all the big dogs and you don't save the little people, because you're paying attention as a country to your revenue. And if that's how you're going to keep making money, I can't cut that off. Because that's what the little people don't know. So they have to save those types of things. These are the businesses that are constantly getting saved, the industries that are constantly getting saved by our country because it produces revenue for the country.
Yep, that's the top. So the top export goods. So food and beverage at the top, 100. This is 2017, 133 billion. Crude oil, fuel, petroleum products, 109 billion. Civilian aircraft engines, 99 billion. Auto parts, engines, and cars, 86 billion. Industrial machines, 57 billion. And then passenger cars, 53 billion. Pharmaceuticals, 51 billion. So that's your top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 categories. And that doesn't include the services, which is travel and transportation, 1, finance and insurance, 2, sale of intellectual property, which I was talking about, IP type stuff, 49 billion are the top 3 on the service side.
There we go. So think about this, ladies and gentlemen, that if you're listening, think about this when
that's export. That's export,
right?
Yeah.
That's when you think of the jobs they're trying to create here, the money that the government puts into certain industries. If you look at those industries, the government probably puts a lot of money into those industries because they know that will generate them money. Okay, so you always have to pay attention to that revenue side. Now,
so let's look at import because you can charge more. We can charge more for import. So let's go to import. So here we go. It's coming up now. See, this is why, the world of podcasting is amazing. Like, you don't have to guess and have weird hot takes. You could just look it up. So this is 2016. Major imports, machinery, including computers and hardware. Number 1, electrical machinery. Number 2, vehicles and automobiles. Number 3, minerals, fuel, and oil. Number 4, pharmaceuticals. Number 5. So literally almost the exact same list outside of like food is the same top things that come into our country. Medical equipment, furniture, plastics, etc. Precious metals, organic chemicals. So almost the same, like 5 of the top 7 that we export, we import in at twice the amount, 2 to 3 times the amount. So we have a deficit.
You just saw that in numbers, T. Like we're just
doing numbers. Like,
we're just looking at
guys,
numbers.
This is how we're very practical guys when we think about this stuff. Like we're not hot taking this off of nothing. Like
These are just the numbers. These are just the numbers. We're bringing in more than we're sending out. We have more debt, right, than we have income, basically. That's what's happening. When the Fed starts,
you would have to charge more. You're going to either export more, which, okay, like we're the more expensive, we're the high quality part, right? Like we're the high quality, so we sell less at a higher rate. But then when it comes in, you can increase your import taxes, which is something Trump was looking to do to try to offset that deficit with China. He was like, hey, our deficit's off. He just has to charge more when you bring stuff in, because we want to focus on more American-made stuff. Like that's something he actually put on the table.
That was a practical, before it got politicized, that was a practical make America great again statement, right? Understand that from the numbers, we have to charge more if we're going to go out and get more money. Like America has to be the top importer, export, right? Like we have to have the value. So on those things, right, when you say we can charge a bit more for when it goes up, but what these other countries, China, Russia, right, all these countries, they're doing the same thing. So at some point they could be like, well, we don't need your stuff. Ours is better than yours. Matter of fact, you need ours. So we're going to charge you. And because again, talk about America's dominance, if that's on the decline, if we're on the back end of that, that's how countries get bullied. They're like, oh, no, we don't need to pay your money. What? I'm not going to pay you that. I make it myself and we're good over here.
Yeah.
And then you lose power. So back to the thesis, right? Like financially, if you were just dealing with your own household, these are the same problems you would deal with. How do I cut expenses? How do I raise income, right? And then making sure that I'm paying down all of this debt. As a country, what's happening is we are printing money. We are printing money.
To pay debt.
To pay debt. Because we have so much money out there, eventually what will happen is the circulation of money, the US dollar will go down, right? Because there's too much of it in circulation. It doesn't hold the same value. When other countries know that, and they know that you're printing all this money and we're holding it, but it's actually going down in value. If I can then, as China, as another country, come in and say, I don't actually want to use that. We're just going to use our own currency and we're going to figure out a way how to make this the currency, right? We're going to just do this. And then all of a sudden our nation is strengthened. Before you know it, that US dollar doesn't have as much value. Now, it's harder to pay back that debt. So again, I made that statement of what has to happen is we have to remove the Band-Aid quickly. We can't keep kicking the can down the road because this gets worse. We'll have to keep printing money, or they'll have to keep raising taxes to raise the income, or keep charging other countries more money, or, right? We have to figure out a way to bring in more income or cut the expenses, which means we're going to have our liberties taken away because they're not going to be paid for by the government. Right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Some of the privileges that we have, for sure.
Yeah, those are the only things.
It's interesting, right? But again, it's a dichotomy, right? It's something you're going to have to manage. I don't think it's ever going to be perfect. I don't think it's designed to be perfect, to be quite honest, right? So it has to be something that's managed at optimum levels. The biggest thing that we're saying, everyone, and we love to hear your thoughts, it can't even be managed at optimum levels, yet alone try to resolve it, which I don't think is possible. That's just my personal hot take on it. But it can't be managed because of the environment that we have. So now the question becomes, what do we do about it, right? Like, because I'm more of I can only control me, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody, I put a post up yesterday about vaccination and your choice and not choosing, et cetera, et cetera. And somebody said to me, Steve Terell, so shout out to Terell, my boy, from the Crazy House. Everybody knows that was from the Crazy House, know what I'm talking about. But he said, and I was very realistic and practical about it. And at least I tried to be. And he goes, for somebody that's so real, he was like, how can you be so realistic and a cow turd and a Fakers fan, right? Like the Lakers and the Cowboys, right? So he takes a shot. But it's very practical, right? And so I try to be practical when I look at problems. And from a practical sense right now, I think our energy, before we can even get to the problem, needs to be around how do we practically even figure out a path to work together? Like, I just can't get past, like, it doesn't matter you got to be able to figure out how can we actually work together to get anything done. But it starts with us as the people. We give this engine the fuel. Like at the end of the day, I believe we give the engine the fuel with our votes, with our, me and you talk about it. We talked about it of like, hey, so how much is that like worth, right? We talked about having a whole episode on that. We give the subscribe, we give the like, we give the comment, we give this and that. We give all of that its steam. And if we want practical, at least objective, working together as adults, which our whole school system is supposed to be built around, right? Like these guys are making laws telling our kids how they should work together in teams with the current curriculum, but they won't even do it themselves. If we as the people don't set a standard and hold a line, this is what we're going to get. But we're constantly driven by our emotions. We've been radicalized. We've been, politicized. We've been all these things. I don't even know if that last one was a word, but I feel like it is right at this day and age. Right. And we are allowing it to happen. So this ain't our politicians. In a democracy, this is us. In my personal opinion.
So they say. Us. So they say.
If you believe that there's a real democracy, right? I would argue if we don't have a perfect example of a democracy, I think it's the closest thing we probably gonna get to it, right? But at the end of the day, it's on us. And we keep with our eyes, with our clicks, with our likes, with our tweets and all this stuff, we are fueling this fire. Trump came, there was an article that came out in a book, and Trump kind of praised AOC. And he said, people are afraid of her. I watch old grown men afraid of this woman. He said she walked down, everybody shivering. He goes, because she has a base that's powerful, like I have a base that's powerful. And I read that. I knew what he was saying, meaning they riding with me no matter what. And here goes the thing. That means whatever he's pushing, he got you and me going to back it up, or whoever his followers are. AOC, he was saying, got a base that's going to rally behind her and back her up. So who's giving these people power? We, the people, are. And that's my thing. People could come out and be whatever they want. But if we don't, it's kind of like I could drop an album next week. That don't mean it's going number one on Spotify. Right? Like the people got to make that album number one, right? And it's the same thing. We got to do better. So that's my all this is great. We talk about it, but none of this starts anywhere until we can solve a problem. And we can figure out how to way to solve a problem. And the people must demand that from their government. They must demand that. But if we want to keep getting caught in the emotional train, look, there's very smart people like Chris out there, and that are going to just watch your emotions, put their net out and capture every single thing. Oh, you want to throw your money that way? I'm just gonna put my net out. You gonna do this? I'm just gonna put my net out, and they're just going to, and it's going to explode. And they're going to be like, you guys built my moat for me. Thank you. And then now you're gonna have it, and then we're just gonna come right in, and everything's gonna be on sale.
Because again, T,
I'm just saying
that is the perspective. I think we're too far in the matrix.
Yes,
we're actually too far in the matrix.
Yeah.
For all my optimism and right, like great outlook on life, I don't think we will do this. I don't think we'll win this one because there's too many chinks in the foundation. There's too many cracks. There's too much that we have to build up first before we can even get to the place you're talking about. Right? You think that base is like base level, right? To get to the actual issues that we're dealing with.
What is the foundation anymore? What does America stand for?
That's what
we used to at least have something we stood for.
That's what I'm saying. Well, I don't know that we won't ever not be divided because we have all this individualism and all this, I say this and I'm this side. We're actually moving more towards tribalism. We're moving more towards like, I just want to be with this group of people that are like-minded, that think like me, and I don't want to really deal with other people. That's actually what we're kind of moving towards. And the reason why I say we're too far in the matrix is because our media and our politicians already know that. So we're trying to break something that they already are playing that game. The media already knows they can keep us divided. politicians already know.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm like maybe the John the Baptist in the thing, not saying John the Baptist, but you understand what I'm saying. Like, I'm like, guys, we are being manipulated.
We've talked about this on the podcast, bro.
We've talked about I say it again. I keep talking about it. None of this stuff, we elect them. They don't elect themselves.
So that's what I mean, though. There's so much unlearning and like stuff we have to talk about just to let people know, like, no, we actually are in control. Like, we have to teach people that side so we can get them to a place where we can have a conversation about now what the issues are, right? So we can then get there. But like, we're so far back. We're like back. We're like under the ground. Like, we're not even at ground floor. We're like under the ground. And the issue is we're in the matrix. Like, if you don't actually, this goes back to our conversation about politics, right? Like, in politicians, and I still say it. Yeah, we got caught up in the, hey, let's vote, right? Our voice counts. Let's make sure we get out there. But the other side is, again, you don't know these politicians until you sit down with them and you know them and you have dinner with them and you know their family. You don't know them. You don't know their agenda. You don't know the meetings they're taking. You don't know the money they're taking. You don't know anyone's agenda for why they will change or won't change something, right? And every human being has an agenda. Every human being has something that they're going after, that they're doing for a certain reason to either fulfill something inside of them or something externally. But getting all of 40 million Americans on one page to be like, these are the list of problems. How do we solve that? How do we get to the table? It's not, our system won't allow that to happen.
And everybody's going to have different problems. Like, everybody's going to look at different things, right? Like, obviously. So you got to, like, again, this is why I say it's a dichotomy. It's something that has to be managed, not perfected, right?
But the people managing it.
Huh?
I said the people managing it. It can't be.
Yeah, like, how are we managing it? Like, we are managing it in a way that's like, I am willing to hurt everybody, not to let you win.
And that's when it goes back to, because why? What's your agenda? It's because some people, because this is where we get into that, like, some people, they're just evil. Like, they just hate people. No, right? It could be that, but most likely it's not. Most likely there's something that they want, or there's something that they see, or there's something that they don't want, that they want to be away from, right? So they're just making their choice from their perspective of what they want to do. And that we don't have a foundation for talking about, because our politicians are meant to have us talk about different things. So whenever we get back to the table on the issues, the way the system works, the way the media works, and the way politics work is they have to get us to talk about different issues. They have to divide. So like, until the media and people understand, okay, our actual job is to come to commonality, to figure this out, to get into smaller groups. Maybe the solution is not listening to the media. And now, like I said, we're so far down this rabbit hole that, do we back out? Do we say, hey, when it's election season, there is no CNN, there is no MSNBC, there is no, right? You don't get your news from the curated content that's out there to let you make a decision. You got to go talk. It's on the politician to get in front of you in a way that they don't know how to necessarily.
Well, then we just put it in the hands of the big businesses that are going to be able to fund them to do it. Listen, there is no straightforward solution here. What we do know is this, that we got financial problems. We have cultural problems. We have cultural problems. We have systematic problems. We have identity issues. We're in an identity crisis.
Emotional issues.
We have emotional. We there's a spiritual issue too, right? Like, we got some spiritual things that are taking place in the background, and so essentially, we would be the family that ends up on like Dr. Phil, and like he's going crazy, like he quit on us, right? Like, on the TV show as a country. And the thing that keeps coming to mind is leadership, right? I don't care what anybody, like, my personal hot take is, I don't care what anybody say, Trump was not a good leader, right? Like, I do not believe he was a good leader, because not only do you need to be practical about like systems and business and all that, but good leaders also know how to connect with the people. They know how to galvanize the troops. And whatever you want to say, I did not feel galvanized. I did not feel a part of, right, of that as an individual, and a lot of collectives that I've been around in different groups. And I've been fortunate enough to live around the country and know a lot of different people. I've been in very Republican, political, to liberal states and cities and all that, and it's just not there. And with that being said, I don't know if Biden has that either, right? Because he's an old school politician, so he's kind of like playing the politician role. But I do believe that great leadership, like really phenomenal leadership, is really what we need. And you said it earlier, a vision. Like, where are we trying to go? Right? Like, this is how Obama really got elected. In a lot of ways, it's how Trump got elected. They talked about a future. They painted a picture that we saw, and we believed that we can possibly get there. At least they were a transition piece to getting there. And what I look for as I continue to enhance how I vote is not only somebody who can position it, but actually somebody that can actually put a team together to actually make it happen, right? The top head can't be the only dynamic individual. You got to have some dynamic generals and people that are running it as well. And I think that's that next level that the media knows that they don't want us getting deep down in that. They want us just to look at the figurehead, who's moving the numbers, who's swaying people, because a lot of it is just human psychology. They talk about it. Like, if you're good looking, and people believe what you're saying, and they believe like you're smart, and they believe that you have the character. If you can nail those three, you'll get elected. Like, those are the three. And they were talking about like what was Hillary's problem with, like, people did not really believe her, right? Like Obama, people fairly thought he was a fairly good looking guy. He articulated himself really well, and people believed him. He got elected twice, right? Clinton, he's a fairly good looking guy compared to Bush, and people believed him, right? Yeah. Like, these are things that kind of
like this, and again, this is the issue also when we get heavy political to figure out the political system and what happened. None of those people, and I would agree with you about the leadership side, but I would add a different like I will also add the definition of that leader. And again, we don't know all the decisions the president makes, right? Like,
there's a lot there.
There's probably a ton that we don't know.
He touches more than he actually has a say in. Right, so
exactly. But I would say that leader, the real quality of them, yes, moving people, but also like making the decisions to set the country up for the vision that you have.
But but you got to get the you got to get Congress, you got to get the Senate, you got to get you got to move these people.
But that's what
when I say move people, I don't mean just the people out here. I mean these other branches.
Right. But that goes back to that ego, pride agenda for people, because we're in the matrix, right? Like, those people are having their own things. Even if the president brings Congress and the leadership and their cabinet and all the people together and say, this is what we got to do, right? They might not individually, because those are just individuals that are elected in those positions. Those individuals may not be on board. And that's not necessarily the leader's job to say, like, you have to get on board with this. It's to make the decision and then make sure that things play out the way that they do. Now, that means you can't be in this. And I know this is the Democratic
but these are like other Democrats getting independently voted in.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or
can't like kick them out. But again, that's what I'm saying. That's why it doesn't leave me much hope to believe that we will make this better. The president, the leader that is needed is the leader that will say, guys, this whole shit is broken. No one's going to like me. No one's going to like me, because we have to actually make think of the best coaches. Like, not every player on the team likes them all the time. It's just, that's the way it goes, because they're a leader. That's what we need in the country. And some people might say this is like communism, or like you get to that.
I was gonna say, there's not enough. The way our country is set up, no one branch has that kind of power.
And that's why we're having throwing out these conversations about communism and all that shit. It's because actually what's needed is someone someone to be like, hey, this is what we need to do. I'm sorry, like the stock market's gonna crash. Like, I'm sorry. Like, it's just the way it's going to go. We can't prop this up anymore. Move your money, do what you got to do. Yeah, I know pensions are going to get taken. I know, like, this shit is going to get bad. That's what we need, someone to step up and tell us. This is going to get worse before it gets better. Can everyone buckle up? We are about to take a nosedive, but we're going to try to pull this thing up. And there's no politician that can come out and say that and still get elected.
If that is truly the solution,
because let's go back to what we just talked about.
If that is truly the solution, yes.
Just from a financial piece, high debt. What are the ways
you got to cut some debt? You got to cut some debt. Yeah,
it's gonna get worse. Like, just from a financial position, it's got to get worse. There's no way to clear the debt. They have to stop printing money. They have to trim the expenses. They have to raise the income. It's the only fiscal way to make that happen. So that means things are going to get worse if they stop printing money.
It gets worse because of the people the people that get impacted by the cuts.
Yes.
Let's put that in, like, guys, like, we want to frame this up the right way so people understand, like, because they're like, oh no, you guys are doom and gloom. No. Like, if there's a program that's cut, somebody is going to be impacted by that program being cut.
That's right.
It may not be a majority of America, but somebody's going to be impacted by that. That's what we're talking about. Like, if you're trimming some fat, at the same time of raising income, you can say, maybe, can I get it back? Do we need it? Do you have to ask these really, really hard questions around, like, do we need these programs? Do we need certain programs, and what for? Or do we just focus on, hey, like, all right, we keep all programs, we don't add anything new, but everybody got to pay 10% more taxes.
and the people will complain about that side, but really it's more of the other side, because there's only so much. Because again, you keep raising taxes, if that's your only solution, because that's what the government's only solution has been, because they don't want to pay attention to the expense side, because they know that'll throw off the people if we start cutting. So we're like, all right, let's hold off on the expense side. Let's keep printing money and trying to raise our income. That's all they're focused on. And that method, over time, it won't play out, right? Because you can't keep printing money. And like I said, where we're at in the long-term debt cycle, like, China can just come in and be like, well, we don't want to use the dollar anymore. Then the whole thing goes to nothing.
Yeah,
right?
Well, yeah, the whole world does at that point, because, like, we're just as invested in. They need us just as much as we need them.
We think.
No, well, I would say I have some knowledge around this, because I worked for a Chinese company at one point in time. Well, not a Chinese company, but predominantly Chinese. And I got to kind of get into some of the inner workings of things. They need us just as much as we need them in this current environment, from what I know, working in some of these dynamics of what I know. Now, I could be totally wrong. I was not, like, meeting with ambassadors or anything of that nature. But just, like, in my little snippet in there, they're not there yet, but people are concerned.
Right.
Like, people, like, there is right to be concerned. And when we talk about China, we're talking about who's going to be the world power that people depend on and lean on. And then what happens is, exponentially, you get more power because people lean on you, like people lean on our dollar to sustain their own currency. If that leaves, we have a problem. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we have a problem. So, these are all, like, there's no one answer. We start off in one place and we go somewhere else, but this is where we're at. This
is where we're at. And again, starting from the beginning, I don't think we had a solution this episode. It's more about just, I think, awareness of, like, do you understand how deep in the matrix we are, yet how big and catastrophic these problems could potentially be? And I don't know that people understand that dichotomy, right? Just of, like, this is really big stuff. And it's kind of one of those sayings, right? You can't see the trees through the forest or whatever. Like, you're in it. Or you can't see the forest through the trees, right? You're in it. We're so in it. We're so inundated with Facebook and CNN and all these things. We're so in here that we can't actually zoom out and be like, oh man, the country's kicking this thing down the road. Like we may not have some of those things that we thought we want. Me on the financial side, I'm always like, what if, what if, like, we don't have a stock market in 40 years. Like, you got to remember, like, everything changes in a global perspective, right? When nations fall. China.
Well, listen, there's the blockchain. We can argue that people can just say no stock market, it can tokenize and totally flip to a whole nother grid. Like, that is totally plausible.
Until the government comes in like China did and says, that's illegal. So we're not going to allow that because you need to keep this currency here. Because again, that's what we said. The biggest thing that's going to
stop. Because people trying to get off the yen in China.
Yeah, because the biggest thing that's going to stop blockchain and crypto are governments, because they're going to lose the power. This is all we're talking about, guys.
Until they can control. Yeah, until they can figure out control it, which is very difficult. But
they'll figure it out. They'll figure out a way. They'll figure out a way to tax it. But anyway, all that being said, I don't know that there's a lot of solutions out there, but I
got one,
which is
your personal responsibility. I think I think it starts with us. I think it starts with our likes and our clicks and our tribalism. And I believe that we must take the blue pill or the red pill? I forget which one it was, right? At this point, you got to take the other pill.
Dirty confession. I've actually never seen the whole movie of The Matrix. I've probably seen bits and pieces of it, right? But I know the gist of it. I've never. Well, you know that I don't do movies. I never.
Oh my God! I'm taking you on December 22nd. I'm going to force you to go watch the new Matrix that's coming out.
Oh, there's a new one coming out.
Yeah, there's a new one coming out. I'm going to force you to do it. I swear, and we're going to we'll live it or something, and I'll be like, I got him to go to a movie to watch one complete Matrix, and you're not allowed to fall asleep either in the theater. But nonetheless, I digress. I think we do have to take a social responsibility, a personal responsibility of, if nothing else, Chris talks about it. Get to know your politician, get to know what you're looking for, don't go to Facebook for your information. If Facebook does pique your interest on something, go research it. Actually go research it, right? And take your time and don't get caught in the herd mentality just because it feels good, right? Because it feels good. And I know I'm talking everything against human nature at this point in time. I just believe that things could change, but it does start with an awareness. And hopefully, if all I did was give you an idea, the same way Morpheus just gave him an idea that there's something different. Yeah, a big black guy I don't have a trench coat on, but I just hope that you can just consider that and hold your politicians accountable if you get out of the matrix just for a little bit.
That's it. And that's a great perspective to end on. I'll share mine because in the same vein, right, where it's personal responsibility, I agree. I just always would say your personal responsibility is going to come with you fighting financially to get out of the matrix. That's what keeps us in the matrix.
That's fair.
A lot of it is our need to be in the matrix, our need financially to need this resource, to need that there. But if you break yourself out of the financial matrix, right? If you can create your own economy, if you have your own things that you can slowly step out of the matrix and see it for what it is. That's fair. It's been one of the biggest blessings in my life to be an entrepreneur and find a way to create my own economy where I can have my own income. I've been able to step out of the matrix in a lot of the areas that we talk about. Right? I don't have to worry about vaccination as much because I don't have to talk to people. I stay in my bubble because I don't need the economy right out there to do anything. I can do the same thing when it comes to and this is what I say about the politician level. Remember, money is the base. Politicians are the second level. Politicians go to the people with money. If you really want to make change, have income, and the politicians will come to you. And then
this is like straight powernomics.
That's exactly what it is, right? We can fight all we want and talk, and it is our personal responsibility, absolutely, to voice our opinion and see our leaders and all that stuff. True. But go get yourself to a high net worth. Go get yourself to a higher net worth than you are right now. I bet you have more ability to make change. I guarantee.
Net worth and network, match them.
Match them up, right?
And you can go to your local politician and say, I need you to do this.
That's right. And you'll get the meeting. You'll call and be like, hey, because they know you're the local person in town with this network. Yeah, I'll sit down with you. And then you tell them, this is what I like to change. I would like to see this. This is an issue for me. This is an issue for my community. What can we do about that? And yes, then you do have my vote and my $100,000 for your campaign. Because that's how this country works, right? Mm-hmm. So You want to take personal responsibility? Great. Take personal responsibility for getting out of your financial situation and getting to that next level. Because then all the rest of the stuff, you actually have the ability to change. You don't have to talk about the wealthy, bad man. You can be the great, right? The great-hearted person that's also wealthy, that does all the things you want to do and changes laws and all that stuff. But it's not going to come unless you have some financial stature or you have a large influence. And normally that's going to come with financial stature too.
And I'll leave it with this since we're leaving it. And anybody want an example of this? Donald Trump. He is the epitome of make a lot of money, have political power, get a group, and then he took the greatest chance ever, and it's got to be president of the United States of America for one term. Nobody can ever take that away. I don't like the guy in a lot of ways, but nobody can ever take it away. He leveraged, I'm out of the matrix. I create the matrix now.
That's right.
I'm coding the matrix now. That's it. I'll leave it there. That's an example. Now, somebody may not like that, but that is the reality of it. Go look up his history. So he writes about it. So
that's right. And I think that's what we all should focus on. I really just do. I believe that is a way out, and that's personal responsibility, because you have to create a plan of how you're going to get out of the matrix financially. You got to hustle. You got to figure it out. That's your role. That's what I believe. And lots of things will change. So
shameless plug, call Chris. He got you.
That's right.
Shameless plug. Well, it's not shameless. I'm giving it. So
that's right.
Talk to Chris. It's a biased plug, not shameless. Biased plug.
Biased plug. But it's true, man. People need a plan on how to get out of the matrix financially. And what I've always learned, and I've taught people, is we don't actually have the tools. Never been taught how to get out the matrix. They want you in the matrix. That's why you don't have the tools to get out of the matrix. So we need to do that. But man, life would change. There's lots of big problems, lots of things happening in the world. Not always having an optimistic view that things can change, that there is hope, but we got to do the work. We got to do the work, right?
Yep.
So till next
good stuff.
It's been a good.
This is a good one. Like no solution, no major solution at all, but it's okay. But we got a little piece of it, right? We got it right at the end. We got a little nugget we can take with us. So,
that's right.
But don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Do all those things, comment. We don't know where it's going to go on the screen. We do this every time, but we'll figure it out one day. But
that's right. One day we'll look at it and say, this is where it goes.
This is where it's at. Like season 13, we'll get there.
We'll get there. But either way, we appreciate all of you listening. We want to hear your perspective on this also. So again, hit us up, send us a message, shoot us a text. We'd love to chat about it with you because T and I are having these conversations, but we want to have them with you as well. Because again, that's really how we create this change. It's really having these conversations and sharing perspectives with more people. Okay. So until next week, guys, we're signing off.
God bless y'all. Thank you.
Take care.